Welcome, everyone. This is Greg Rock, and we're excited to bring another Meet the Author series to you through this webcast. We have one of our frequent contributors, David Hamme, who's recently released a book, Customer Focused Process Innovation. And David's been kind enough to come on down and give our members of BPM Institute a preview of some of the concepts that are covered in the book. And when we search for articles and content in the industry that map to a lot of the principles and standings that the Institute backs, David's done a great job of hitting on many of those. His background in consulting at both Ernst & Young and North Highland companies has given him a lot of exposure to how companies are run and how you can tie strategy to actual action in the organization. Some of that work at Lowe's Home Improvement, and now runs his own consulting business. Many of you may have seen some of David's articles on our website over the last couple years. And so, David, we know how much work goes into creating and publishing a book. This one you did with McGraw-Hill, so we appreciate you coming and sharing this with our members. And the subtitle of the book, Linking Strategic Intent to Everyday Execution, is something that I know a lot of our members could use some help with, and always looking for tips there. And so I'd like to turn things over to David at this point. I also wanted to mention that we have a free chapter of the book available for our members. You can download that right from the website. And I also have some details for folks on a discount that we have on the book for folks that want to go and get a full version of it. So, David Hamme, welcome to BPM Institute's Meet the Author series.
Great. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to the audience. Really excited about the book and some of the things we're doing with in terms of training programs, and always enjoy working with your organization just because we need organizations who have thought leadership in the process space, and your organization does a great job of that.
Thank you, thank you. So, we've got an audience that has a lot of experience, and they know there's a lot of writings and things that happen in the industry. So I guess we'll put you on the spot. You know, there's a lot of process books that are out there. Can you give our folks an overview and let them know what's unique about your process book and what they should hope to glean from it?
Absolutely, happy to do so. Real quick, just to kick off, the book is Customer Focused Process Innovation. And I'll tell you where the genesis for writing the book was the fact that there's not really a great instruction manual out there today for how you manage and innovate an organization. We all think about the traditional hierarchical structure for how we have the command and control leadership model that's so prevalent in corporate America today. I'm an advocate of a process model and using processes for doing more than just simply improving efficiency or quality or cost or throughput or scalability, but also using it as a strategic lever as well as a management lever. So the book is Customer Focused Process Innovation. It's available at most of your major booksellers, and I'm proud to say it was recently awarded the Shingo Research and Professional Publication Award. In regards to my background, I am the Managing Director of Ephesus Consulting, and our focus at Ephesus is how do we drive innovation to medium to large size companies. And from my perspective, the easiest way to use that is to use a process tools, and that's really kind of the genesis of the book and a lot of what I focus on through the course of the book. So to talk about what's different, one of the major things is I look at process as really a tool to help innovate an organization. And I have done this over many years, and one of the things that I've developed is a model that I call the 4 facets of innovation. And I'll share that in just a moment in a little bit more detail. But processes, to me, are a way that we can clearly communicate and identify what the capabilities of an organization are, and that's through process mapping and understanding all the outputs that come from the different processes. If you believe that's true, then the next step is to understand processes can really become a strategic calibration tool. And what I mean by that is every process that you have in your organization, and I think of it as an organization as a network of processes. If you take that network of processes and know what the inputs are and the outputs are, you can then look at those outputs and very specifically identify what are the attributes of those outputs? So that process system is the actualization of your strategy. It's how you're taking inputs and how you're creating outputs. And ideally, those outputs are what your customer's wanting and needing. So it's a calibration tool. By adjusting the process or by adjusting the inputs, you change the outputs. And that process is the actualization of everything that your organization is doing that's unique from the competition. The last thing is if you know how those levers need to change, then you can create an innovation portfolio, which to me is a set of initiatives that ideally will change how your organization is promoting itself to the market. And if you can do that in a very efficient manner, you have the capability to really kind of outmaneuver your competition. So first thing about the book that's important to me is using processes as the basis for innovation. I talked about the 4 facets, and I'll just flow through these really quickly, but I think companies a lot of times forget some of these critical elements of innovation. And the first one is customer focus. And let's face it, we're all busy. When you get inside an organization, leadership is looking to a lot of different things. They're coaching employees. They're, trying to impress their bosses. A lot of times the customer gets lost in that. I view the customer as critical. They're the arbiter of whether your company is successful or whether it fails. And I use them as a navigational beacon. So when we think about that process network, the first thing we have to do is get rich information from the customer via feedback loops or direct observation or by embedding the acquisition of customer information in the process itself, so we know what the customer wants. If we know what the customer wants, then we can begin to plot how we're going to change our network to do that. And we have to do that in taking into consideration not only our capabilities, but also what the potential competitive responses are. So that's the strategic planning facet. Once you have those pieces in place, then you need to improve them over time. That's kind of the operational improvement facet. That's building the capabilities of your organization to be strategically nimble and flexible both today and in the future. And that takes into account how you're going to drive profitability by taking out costs or building quality improvements into your processes. Then the last one, again, is the initiative management, which incorporates the innovation portfolio that I talked about previously. This is how do you take all those initiatives, strategic and operational, and put them into a portfolio and manage them like a portfolio. So I view this not like it kind of replaces a portfolio management organization. But what it really allows you to do is think of all those initiatives as stocks or bonds or investments of some type and understand how they came into being and have a process to bring them to fruition, and then understand how you're going to prioritize those, because the order of the execution of those initiatives determines the value that your portfolio is delivering to your company. And again, I use processes as the overlay for all of this. The second thing I think is important about the book is I view processes as having the capability to be a managerial foundation. And again, today we have a lot of companies that are set up on that hierarchical organization that really dates back to the Roman Empire, where you report to a boss and your boss reports to a boss, and you're not necessarily tied to the processes. I look at an organization and the great potential of beginning to organize around processes. So you would have a process manager who would be responsible for a discrete process, usually as large as it can possibly be, from an end to end, and allow them to manage that process in coordination with other people as you're changing the organization. In the book, I really kind of define how this works and all the structures and processes and approaches you need to transition from our traditional organization to a process-based organization, and identify all the advantages and disadvantages. Just like any other major transformation in a company, when you do something this large, quite frankly, you will find people who cannot adapt to the new model. They're used to existing in an environment, the command and control environment that's so prevalent today. When you put them in a model that's much more efficient, like a process-based approach, you will lose people. And that's why it's critical for so many organizations to begin to develop the process-based skill sets, things that BPM Institute does in terms of developing a curriculum and helping people get those basic process-based skills, so that when they come into these types of organizations that are much more efficient, they have the skills and knowledge and the background to be successful. Also in the book, I've included some things that I think that are gaps in what's been documented and shared previously. One of the ones that I find most important, and I've gotten a lot of great feedback on, is how to build and execute a process improvement program. We're all used to some of the pieces like the charters and the different documentation that accompanies a project, but there's some steps in there that I think is missing a long time. And so over a 25-year career, I've worked with a number of over 50 companies at this point, and I've gotten some great tips and techniques, and so I share that in the book. The other thing is you can't lay out an approach without giving a roadmap to how to do a transition. And one of the things I do is I give you a roadmap to how do you transition slowly and methodically and appropriately from a traditional organization to a process-based organization. And I recognize not every organization is ready for that big of a transformation. So I do share in the book some ways to get some quick hits and begin to build that momentum. Then I also provide what I'll call an ideation to execution approach. And how do you take ideas that are bubbling up in your organization, get them to the right people, which in a process-based organization many times is a process manager, and then have them take those ideas from just a beginning design to how you get them involved into the innovation portfolio and get them executed in the resources and allocate and the focus on those initiatives. So I think that's a critical miss, as most organizations don't have a very clearly defined innovation process. I give them at least a starting point to do that. Then the other thing I provide in the book is a collection of process models. So many of us who are process practitioners over the years have collected a number of different ways that we set up processes. And I like to think of these as kind of like the Legos of the process world. It gives you the ability to take a piece and put it into another environment and see how it works. And if it doesn't work, you flip it in a new Lego. So I have a number of different process models that I share during the book that have worked with me over my career. And those are what have allowed me to be successful when a lot of times when teams are just banging their heads on the wall and can't think about the next steps. This is where I like to use these process models. So that in a nutshell is kind of customer-focused process innovation. And here are some of the endorsements I've received from some of the people who have participated or utilized the book at this point.
All right, super, David. We appreciate it. And I think, with the same thing that attracts a lot of our members to the articles that you have on the site, I think are true of the book as well. This customer-centric approach is a stalwart of our teaching, and we incorporate that into virtually all the classes that we have. And so I think it's always important to keep the customers in mind, and they will make and break that company faster than anything else. And so we appreciate your perspective on that. I had a couple thoughts as you were giving us an overview of the book. So let me ask a few questions here, things our members might be curious about. You mentioned the Shingo Award that the book received, and that it was recognizing your contribution in the field of operational excellence. Can you talk a little bit more about the award for folks that aren't familiar with it, and any thoughts that you have on the connection between operational excellence and BPM?
Absolutely. The Shingo Research and Professional Publication Award is an ongoing award that's awarded throughout the year. And the reason why I really like this award, and one of the ones I was very pleased to receive, is it's based upon ideas and how these ideas and concepts can shape the field of operational excellence. And there's a Lean and a Six Sigma focus to it, but also they're looking for how the new models and new concepts can help teams and companies through their application to achieve great new results. So it is an application process that you submit in, and you get evaluated by people across corporate America who read the book, understand the material, and then decide if you're worthy of the award. So it's a great award for me. As we think about operational excellence in BPM, I think there's kind of a gradual convergence. I talked about the strategic levers of process, but really kind of how do we set up an organization operationally to achieve not only our strategic aims, but our business goal aims, our financial goals. And really those three come together, and I think process is probably the key in terms of how do you map all those things and put them in the same language, give them the same definitions, so that you can talk about strategy from a process perspective. You can talk about how you're improving profitability from a process perspective. You can talk about how you're improving quality from a process perspective. So I view BPM as a uniter of a lot of these different focuses of companies and giving them the ability to kind of have a common language, a common framework to talk about how they're going to innovate and change.
Right. Excellent, David. And we would agree with that as well. Actually, folks may have noticed this year on the 2016 version of our Learning Paths that we've actually added a whole string of operational excellence courses. But we position it not as an either-or decision, but essentially operational excellence and BPM better together is kind of the theme of a lot of those classes. And so the early feedback has been positive there. Just in short summary, I guess, if you could list a short number of takeaways that folks would come away reading the full version of the book, what would your thoughts be there on what folks should expect to get out of the book?
I guess there's two things that I'll primarily point to that I think are pretty important. One is thinking about processes as the actualization of your strategy. And that becomes critical because, let's face it, it's a very competitive world out right now. Companies are complex, they're complicated, they have disconnected planning and budgetary processes. There's not a lot of coordination across the company. There's, different silos that prevent work from flowing through very well. As I think about how companies need to refocus on the customer, real change occurs at the performer level. It occurs at the process level where your people on your front line, they're executing a process on a daily basis, and that is what the customer is seeing, and that is why the customer comes back to you or why they look for alternatives. Process, to me, is the link that's been missing between the theory of what we want to do and the execution of what we want to do. So I'd love to see a convergence of the two of those. So as we're thinking, as we have executives and we're theorizing about how we need to change ourselves strategically, we should be looking at those processes, the actual processes that are getting executed on a daily basis. If you can do that, then you can change them, and that's real change, and that's when you'll move the market. So the first thing in the book big takeaway for me that I like to share is processes are strategic assets, and you need to manage them as such. The second major takeaway is thinking about processes as management tools. And instead of having functional leads, now have process leads. So, today you have, your traditional VP director role. I'd like to replace this with a role where you have project or process owners and then process managers who work with them and really kind of breaking it down, because value is delivered through processes. It's not delivered through an organizational structure. And the more we think in terms of processes inside these companies, the better we'll be able to calibrate to our customer and create the outputs that they want, and to do that as profitably and as efficiently as possible.
All right, great. Well, that's super, David. I appreciate you giving folks a succinct expectation there. There's a lot of books that write about process improvement from a theory perspective, but one of my favorite expressions is the proof is in the pudding. So can you share with us, have you had anybody adopt the messages of the book and how that turned out, and anyone who's put you to task on this yet?
No, that's a great question, and I agree with you completely. These ideas are just ideas unless they can be implemented and utilized. At the time that I wrote the book, I had utilized these theories and concepts to help 3 business units, not 3 big companies, but 3 significant business units in major companies, and they're still using it today and have been very successful, and those companies expanded. But what I was really looking for, what would have been, the top of the mountain for me is if I could help build a company from scratch using these tools and these techniques. And I was fortunate that I fell in at the right time, right place. And there's a company now, it's called Echo Park Automotive. It's a division of Sonic Automotive, and Sonic is the 3rd largest car dealership in the nation. Echo Park is the new foray into pre-owned automobiles for them. And, so its competitors would be like CarMax, Carvana, some of those types of companies. And we really created the company from a process perspective. We have process owners in the company who are responsible for different processes that integrate with the customer. And it's been fantastic. We opened 3 stores in Colorado a year ago, and it's public knowledge now we're looking to open about 25 here in the next year. But what we've really done is kind of broken down how the customer interacts with the company, and we have owners of those different pieces. So as an example, the average trip to a car dealership to purchase a car takes 4.5 hours. We have re-engineered the processes through this model. We have it down to 43 minutes. The average person goes in and interacts with 6 or 7 people when they're in that store. We have it down to 2. And in some states we'll be able to do it 1. It kind of depends upon state regulations. So again, we've looked at all the processes that the customer interacts with and all the processes that they use also for servicing and managing their car. And we've completely redesigned the model based upon that to create what I think is the best-in-class experience. So another example is customers, it helps them to care for their car on a regular basis. Well, we give free car washes for life. So every one of our facilities has a car wash that you get a fob that you can just take your car and at any time get a free car wash. So it's been a great success thus far, and what's been really rewarding to me is seeing how, when you set up based on processes and not that traditional org structure, how much more efficient and effective the organization comes and how much more reactive it is to the market than a more traditional company.
Well, that's excellent. Well, we look forward to hearing more things about Echo Park going forward. We could use one of those in our neck of the woods here up in Massachusetts between our rainy, snowy spring and the winter. Free car wash would be quite welcome up here. So congratulations on that. Well, listen, David Hamme, wanted to thank you so much with emphasis consulting for both your contributions regularly on the Institute and letting our members know about your book. For our members, David's been kind enough to give us a free chapter. You can get a hold of that on the same page that you registered for this webcast. And also for folks that are interested in purchasing the book, David and the publisher has extended a 45% discount to BPM Institute members, and so we would encourage folks to add that to their reading as we enter spring and summer here. So David, thank you so much again, and we look forward to your upcoming writings, and congratulations on the book.
Great. Thank you, Graf. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Bye-bye now.